The boys AT rifle. That's the current big talking point within Battlefield 5. It's forming a real divide between those who like it and those who don't, and I made a video on why it shouldn't be nerfed and why I actually think it's good for the game, whereas some others didn't go that far, but definitely sided with it being reasonably okay in its current form and more of a gimmick weapon, but some have come from the other end of the spectrum and encouraged nerfing it just days after its implementation into the game. One of those individuals is JackFrags, and he's the focus of my title and thumbnail purely because he's the largest creator to sit on the other end of the spectrum, and thus he's the one that's being referenced most often. So today I'm taking another, even more detailed, look at the boys AT rifle to try to clear up some of this mess. I want to stress that this isn't a video that's focused upon my opinion versus Jack's. I'll be using him as a point of reference, but he's actually more just a personification of the kind of opinion that I'll be diving into analysing. And I also have no problem with Jack at all. I actually like a fair amount of what he produces, and besides, he likely doesn't know who I am anyway, and wouldn't have been bothered at all had I attempted to bash him either way. Now I'm not going to just cover everything I said in my previous video again, as what would be the point in that. So I highly recommend you watch that video as well to be fully informed. I'll link to it in the description and my pinned comment. Now the opening of this video was me in one spot for like a minute straight, and although that wasn't intentional camping, I promise you, people just kept turning up, I do cover in my previous video why I'd rather extremely passive players use this weapon than an MMG for example. This is the less quote-unquote toxic choice, and I have lots of reasons for that. To find out all of those details, please do find the link in the description. Right, that was a long intro, but sometimes it's necessary to set the scene and try to curb some of those leapt to conclusions and false narratives that get derived from content. And yes, this is going to be long and detailed, but you should have already grasped that from the advertised length of the video. So after my last video, I saw the wildly varied responses and opinions involving this weapon and what I said. I went and watched other videos, I listened to feedback, I went back into BF5, paired the boys AT rifle with the revolver again as I had before, and got to thinking about if I was wrong, or if I'd missed anything. What's the answer? No, I wasn't wrong, in terms of what I focused upon, but yes, I did miss a couple of concepts. These two aspects combined bring to light a problem with Battlefield that arises every now and again, but never gets addressed and honestly, often goes unnoticed by the vast majority. It also shows that it's possible for my opinion and an opinion like Jack's to both be at least somewhat correct and not necessarily entirely cancel each other out. That's because of the difference between platforms, the difference between console and PC. This isn't the whole issue, I'll cover a multitude of other ones along the way, but it's the overriding one. And Jack, to his credit, did say that the boys AT rifle may be different on console. Although he didn't consider that for his overall presentation, he did mention it at the end, and I didn't mention PC in my video at all. So this problem is akin to the sweet spot discussion in Battlefield 1. After all of the nerfs and alterations, it honestly wasn't that big a deal on console for most players. In fact, it helped to make bolt-action rifles relevant against other more forgiving precision weapons. But on PC, where with the mouse you basically point and click, it's a very different dynamic with separate variables. Precision movements with your entire hand are far easier to make than with the end of your thumb. That doesn't take much working out, and that's basically the comparison between using a mouse and using thumbsticks on a controller. And so a one-shot kill weapon gets a massive boost from this on PC. Ease of use is increased, and thus the rewards go up and the potential downsides are reduced. As stated, I didn't consider the difference on PC in my original video. I'm not sure how, as I'm very familiar with this concept, but I didn't, and that's my mistake. But it's not really that that's the overall issue. Sure, it boosts the potency of the weapon, even when it's up against other mouse and keyboard users using other weapons, for reasons too detailed to fully expand upon in this video, although I have talked about it before, but that entire concept isn't unusual. Look at how much better bolt-action rifles and slug shotguns already are on PC for clear evidence of that. No, the real issue lies in the hipfire. It's infinitely easier to do on PC. Jack's video demonstrates this, and it's been the main takeaway that most people have selected from that video, other pieces of PC content, and PC discussions. You're still essentially just pointing and clicking. Consistently hitting hipfire or no-scope kills, especially at anything beyond very close range, is an entirely different animal on console. Doing it on thumbsticks is so much harder, and honestly isn't a good strategy to even employ on this platform. Not for the vast majority majority of engagements. You can still pull them off, as I have, but it requires a far higher skill level with a controller to do it on a regular basis. That being said, I think this hipfire issue is being exaggerated overall. I don't think Jack hit that many in his video really. It didn't make me instantly think, oh, this actually isn't okay. I mean, he hit a fair few, yeah, but he also missed a fair few, and this was even from clips he specifically selected to show the hipfire accuracy. Although I concede that he will know far more about what's normal and not normal for PC gameplay and his own gameplay specifically. But a fair few of his hipfire shots were also hit whilst bipoded. And bipods make essentially any weapon pretty laser beamish from the hip or from ADS. And most of the time, it would have been easier to ADS anyway in that situation as he was already bipoded. But I again concede it did highlight that hipfire may well be an issue, especially on PC, as it negates the need to bipod probably far more than DICE intended. Content such as Jack's showed this, and it's a solid argument that can counter at least some of my original video. But remember that ability level absolutely plays a part. Jack has, I believe, around a 3.2 KD. He's of a high ability level, is used to killing far more than dying, and the vast majority of players couldn't match what he did in the video. At least again, not as consistently. This doesn't wipe away everything I've just said, not at all, but the concept that a skilled player can cause real damage with something, as he essentially said in his video, shouldn't necessarily be the basis for nerfing something, at least not the sole basis, and I'd say certainly not in a knee-jerk fashion, with this weapon having been available for just a few days now. I want to stress, nerfing things due to high ability usage ruins them for everyone else even more so, and at the same time, nerfing them due to low ability usage, such as campers using it to kill people from a few meters away, well, it basically makes no sense. The weapon may as well have not been implemented into the game at all if that's the case. Again, my previous video explains all of that in vast detail, but I will say here that it's better for everyone if extremely passive players use this weapon over MMGs. And this weapon is very difficult to use in a high ability and efficiency fashion. It's not a quote-unquote good choice, it's challenging. It requires a lot of decision-making skill as well as accuracy and fast reaction times. This is not an overpowered weapon, at least not on console, and I honestly don't think it's OP on PC overall due to similar reasons, but tweaks could help it to be, let's say, better balanced or less trolly. Yes, it's effective for lying down and killing people nearby or whatever, but so is basically everything. From my perspective, and to be blunt if you'll forgive me on this instance, I have a top 1% KD of around 3.7, lots of FPS game experience. I'm generally seen as a pretty able console player, and you've seen from my footage that I can use the weapon fairly well. And I can say hands down, this weapon is harder for me to use than almost anything else on offer. Not for lying down and plinking a few shots out here and there for a few easy and often meaningless kills, but for actually being a versatile and useful member of the team. Significant nerfs would destroy this weapon on console. Many may argue, but their points are often based upon camper usage and a negative fixation on prone gameplay and one-shot kills. The wider picture shows this weapon isn't all that great, and as my last video explained, it's far less of a prone meta offender than MMGs. It's actually helping to curb that issue currently. Now, what other aspects are there to readdress? Well, there's the common call of this weapon now being everywhere, or the concept that people actually don't recognize that, and are getting sick of being killed by it, and are thus claiming it's too strong. Plus there's people that don't have the weapon yet, but they're claiming it's too strong without having used it. We need to remember that this weapon has only just come out. This will be having a massive impact upon usage numbers, and this will carry on through next week and such, as this weapon becomes purchasable via company coins. This shouldn't twist our considerations. Imagine if there were no shotguns in the game, and then a weekly reward was the first shotgun, and for 2 or 3 weeks they're everywhere. Would everyone get sick of them? Yes. Would there be calls for nerfs due to campers, insta-deaths and other connecting issues? Yes. Does that mean shotguns are overpowered? No. We can see right now they aren't even close. They're a low meta option the vast majority of the time. If they weren't, we'd see a lot more of them than we do right now. Yes, the boy's AT rifle may be more versatile or potent than a shotgun, but the main aspect of that point remains relevant. Besides that, this weapon isn't damaging vehicles as many would like. This is on the side of the weapon being essentially underpowered. It's basically weak against vehicles, or so I said, which is true, but apparently only for heavily armored vehicles. It's supposed to be pretty effective against less armored options like cars, etc. I didn't cover that before, and so it's a relevant point, although I think somewhat of a buff against heavily armored vehicles would still be welcome. Perhaps the specialization to upgrade that would make a buff unnecessary, but unfortunately it's bugged, so we have no way of currently knowing. So overall, if this is all so complex, with such varied opinions, and with the weapon's potency and viability being potentially quite different depending upon platform, what do DICE do about it? Well, the one single answer that could fix the problem, and many others, is to balance console and PC separately, but they aren't going to do that. So I'll go through the possibilities that I think are reasonable, but only reasonable individually or in certain combinations, not altogether. Let's not ruin this thing. And I will quickly say, I'd take slowing the rate of fire off the table straight away. I don't think that solves any of the current complaints, and only seeks to make it weaker in an area where it's already weak. So, now let's consider, is 100 meters too far for a one-shot kill to the body? I don't really know at this point. I can make arguments for yes and no, and I can't settle on it. I don't have much of an issue with 100 meters, to be honest. It needs a selling point still, but a nerf to 90 or perhaps 80 meters would potentially be okay. This is all tentative though and would require testing, but I can say that reducing it to anything less than that would be damn near moronic. It would totally destroy the viability of this weapon. And something that's not being considered, if you truly want to see people camp with this thing, a significant nerf to range is how you achieve it. If you only make it viable at a stupidly short range, well, it becomes a trash option that will only be used for no skill kills and trolling. That would be an awful move. Something else I've heard discussed is the removal of the scope options. I can see how scopes could currently be causing some problems on the boys AT rifle, although removing them could also cause even more camping, as it'll again be harder to use the weapon at range, and so people will look to just find close range areas and blast people from close range. One alteration that I pretty much can support, at least to some degree, is a change to non-bipoded hipfire. I don't know how or to what extent, but it seems that hipfire is a major complaint that's made its way to the fore. To reiterate, I still see a lot of missed hipfire shots even from PC players, but yes, it could be altered. The question is, do you flat out nerf it and risk punishing actual good hipfire shots or occasionally rewarding poor ones with random spread, or do you nerf it and add in a hipfire specialization, so if you want at least somewhat accurate non-bipoded hipfire, you have to pick the specialization for it, which has replaced another current one, thus making the weapon that little bit worse anyway. And no, I wouldn't change the so-called hipfire accuracy whilst bipoded. I see no problem with that at all, and it keeps it in line with the bipod balance of other weapons. And again, it's often just easier to ADS in that situation anyway. And so to sum all of that up, JackFrags and people of a similar opinion to him are somewhat right and I think somewhat wrong. And I think I was somewhat right and somewhat wrong. What's clear to me is still that this isn't an overpowered weapon though. It just needs tweaks. It's also clear that it's another instance of platform making a significant difference, and that a major nerf to suit one could entirely ruin it for the other. I really think platform-specific balancing should become standard for games such as Battlefield. But anyway, what do you think? How's the boys AT rifle? What platform are you on? And what do you think of anything I've said today, including how you would or wouldn't change the weapon? Let me know in the comments below. I truly hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to see more, we now know the most important thing to do is to turn on notifications, because YouTube doesn't keep people up to date with subscriptions. But I also kindly encourage you to like, subscribe, and join my Discord server in the description and my pinned comment. Here's the board of awesome for the epic people who support the channel on Patreon. They're all absolute heroes and I love them all deeply and of course, often. If you want to join them on the board of awesome, the link to the Patreon page is in the description and my pinned comment. And with all that said, I'm GetGoodGuy and I'll see you next time. Laters.